So you're a successful senior product manager, right? You're shipping features, you're hitting your goals, but you kind of feel like you've hit a ceiling, like you've plateaued. Well, here's the thing. The path to that next level, it isn't about doing more of the same stuff. It's about doing things differently. And that's what we're talking about today. This is the playbook for breaking through and joining that top 1% of PMs.
Yeah, that quote really hits the nail on the head. That is the core idea right there. If you're serious about breaking through to that next level, the principal or staff PM level, you've got to shift your focus. It's not about just executing on the roadmap anymore. It's about fundamentally changing the systems that your product and your team operate in.
All right, section 1, the senior PM plateau. And the subtitle is More of the Same Isn't Growth. And this is such a common story, isn't it? You work your way up, you become this really competent, respected senior PM who just knows how to get things done. But here's the problem. The very skills that got you here, they're not the same skills that are going to get you to that next level of real strategic impact.
I mean, does this sound familiar at all? You're in the weeds, right? You're leading sprints, you're writing specs, you're launching features. But every launch just feels like another small, incremental step forward. You are so busy, but you're not making those big, disruptive, game-changing moves that you see the top-tier leaders making. That, my friends, is the senior PM plateau. Okay, so let's get into the 1% PM mindset, because really, it's not what you do, it's how you think. So what's the secret sauce? What separates the good PMs from the truly great ones? It's not about working longer hours or shipping more stuff. It's a fundamental, deep-down shift in how you think. It's about changing your entire mindset about your role, your product, and yeah, even your company. So let's break down these mental models of a top 1% PM. Okay, let's start with the first big mindset shift. So your top 10% PM, their thinking is kind of constrained by today's resources. They look at their team, they look at their budget, and they ask, okay, what can we build with what we have? But the top 1% PM, they think way bigger. They're looking out at the whole market and asking, what is the huge, disruptive opportunity out there, and what would it take for us to go seize it? You see the difference? They aren't limited by today's reality. They create a vision so compelling that it actually makes new resources appear.
This one is such a classic trap. It's so easy to get addicted to shipping the next shiny feature, right? It feels good. But a top 1% PM understands they're not just a feature factory. They're managing a whole portfolio. They're strategically balancing offense, the new projects that drive growth, with defense, which is all the important stuff like reducing tech debt, fixing bugs, and just removing the friction that's slowing the business down. It's all about ensuring long-term health, not just chasing those short-term wins.
And this next one, this really gets at the difference between just pure effort and actual impact. Look, anyone can come up with a super complex solution to a problem, but the real genius, it lies in simplification. Elite PMs, they have this almost magical ability to find that 80-20 solution. That one simple, elegant change that gets you 80% of the value with just 20% of the effort. And they do this again and again and again, and those small, smart wins just compound into massive, massive impact over time.
Okay, part 3, a playbook for greatness. We're turning mindset into action now. So having the right mindset is absolutely crucial, but it's not enough, right? The big question is, how do you actually turn that thinking into concrete action? So let's get into the playbook. Let's break down the specific skills and behaviors that these top-tier PMs are practicing day in and day out. So this is the 1% PM's toolkit. Think of it like this. First up, communication. And we're not just talking about being clear. We're talking about being insanely persuasive. It's about building a case with data, with a story that's so compelling that it's impossible for leaders to ignore or say no to. Next, forecasting and measurement. This means you can efficiently predict a project's benefit. And then, this is key, you actually measure the real impact after it launches. This creates a powerful feedback loop that just makes you smarter and smarter. And finally, execution. Look, elite PMs are grinders. They roll up their sleeves and do whatever is necessary to ship. They see no bounds to their role.
All right, next up, a case study, so we can see what this looks like in the real world. I know all this talk about mindset and toolkits can sound a little abstract, so let's ground it in a real-world example. We're going to look at the story of Brandon Bray and how he made that huge leap to principal program manager over at Microsoft.
So here's the situation he walked into. Microsoft had this absolutely critical division-wide process for product quality. We're talking about the big stuff: security, reliability, privacy, the works. And guess what? It was completely, totally broken.
This wasn't just some feature bug. This was a deep, systemic failure that was affecting the entire division.
And just try to wrap your head around the scale of this thing. This wasn't a problem you could solve with your little Scrum team. No way. This required engaging with and influencing 300 people across a ton of different teams. He literally called it a burning fire. Now, let's be honest, most people would see a fire like that and run in the opposite direction, right?
But this is exactly where that 1% mindset kicks in. Instead of saying, hey, that's not my problem, he took what you'd call extreme ownership. He didn't run away, he jumped into the fire. He started organizing the chaos, and he didn't just patch up the process. He turned the entire problem completely around. He changed the system. And really, that's the punchline of the whole story. It was that one act of owning and solving a massive, messy, systemic problem that propelled him to the principal level. See? It wasn't about shipping one more feature. It was about elevating his impact to the point where he changed how the entire organization worked. That is principal level impact. Okay, last section, your path to the top. 3 steps to start today. So the big question for you is, how can you start building this kind of impact in your own career? Now look, it's not going to happen overnight, but the good news is there is a clear path you can start walking down, like right now. All right, here is your ascent plan. Step 1, find your champion. Seriously, a great manager who believes in you is a force multiplier for your career. They're the ones who will trust you with those big, ambiguous, high-stakes problems that are your ticket to proving you can operate at that next level. Step 2, build your network. Start talking to awesome role model PMs. Learn what works for them, not to just copy them, but to really understand their thinking. And step 3, develop your frameworks. You need to figure out your own principles for how you make decisions, and then you need to communicate them often. This is how you scale your influence and show people how you think, not just what you think.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question. But it's not what feature are you going to ship next. It's a much bigger, much more powerful question. I want you to look around at your team, at your product, at your whole company. What's that broken process? What's that recurring problem that drives everyone crazy? What's the fundamental system that's holding everyone back? Because that is your opportunity. So what system will you change first?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like.